start with, INCOG does a lot of environmental work, air quality, water quality. We coordinate a lot of activities through a number of different cities and counties. So one of those organizations is the Green Country Stormwater Alliance. We have about 22 members. There are cities in Green Country that all have stormwater permits. So we do quite a bit of work with those cities, helping them comply with permit required activities. Anything LID really fits into that program. So INCOG applied for a 604B grant in fiscal year 09 under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. We started doing 303D monitoring work. Later on we found out there was some more unused FY05 funds under the 319 program that we were contacted. They were wondering if we could incorporate a green element into our current activities, and we thought sure. Rain gardens would be a good fit for that, so we proceeded along those lines. We applied for, got the grant, started in on that. We did a lot of the front work on that, but we didn't have the expertise we needed to install the rain gardens themselves. So we got a hold of the Oklahoma Conservation Commission. Kevin agreed to come on and help us with that. He's going to provide the expertise to allow us to install the rain gardens. So we had the funding part. He was going to coordinate the activities and put that in. So he actually had the hard job. Okay, we got the money, made things happen, and he rounded up the people, the resources, and everything else, and put everything together. The OKR04 stormwater permit does have some LID components to it, and one of the requirements, it does say to participate in an education program for developers and the public about project designs that minimize water quality impacts, including LID strategies. And so we're trying to incorporate these whenever we can. It also says promoting BMPs appropriate for the local community. So again, they pop up there. And then determine the areas that may have potential to be retrofitted with BMPs, such as LID, fits in real nice there, to reduce the frequency, volume, and peak intensity of stormwater runoff to and from your MS4. So rain gardens fit in real nicely with this program. We got started on the project. Again, it was an ERA project to begin with, 303D sampling with some 519 money to help pull off. What we found out after we got started, we couldn't buy materials with a 604B grant. So we could do coordination work, we could do some of the other organization, but we couldn't buy any materials to install a rain garden. So that's where the 519 came in. They did allow the purchase of materials. So to get everything started, we got the Green Country Stormwater Alliance committee together to help select sites. We asked the community, where would you like to see rain gardens? What sites are appropriate? What's out there? And so we got a lot of feedback from them on where potential sites or locations might be. We had some criteria to help them decide which sites were suitable, which sites were not. One of the criteria that we're looking at was adequate drainage. We didn't have a lot of money for heavy landscaping work. We didn't have heavy equipment. We didn't want to have to dig a big hole and then reintroduce and put in different types of media. We were hoping to be able to use the soil that was in place, work with that. Size, we didn't have a lot of money, so we wanted to do 4 or 5 rain gardens, so we couldn't put it, we were looking for sites that were manageable, not great big facilities, locations. Visibility, one of the components was public education, so we wanted these located in areas that would be readily visible by the general public, where they'd get a lot of traffic so people would see them. Then in construction again, we didn't have the heavy equipment, so the cities, we were relying on volunteers and other people to help put these in, make it happen. So it kind of depended upon who was going to be able to contribute what. And then local materials, mulch, soil, fabric, things like that, we're going to have to acquire that at different locations wherever we could. We started a search on that. And then maintenance. That's always a big issue when you're putting in anything LID. Who's going to maintain the thing? And what people forget a lot of times is a rain garden is a garden, and it does require some maintenance. So after it's installed, everything looks really nice, the plants are in place, but who's going to keep it going? And that was a big concern. And so we wanted some kind of a commitment from somebody that would agree to help maintain this and keep it going. Initially we found 15 sites, 5 were selected, and we ultimately built 4 rain gardens. Okay. You can see the locations of the rain garden. We did one down in Broken Arrow over there. then the Bixby Street project, Remington Elementary, and then Sapulpa Aquatic Center. So those are the 4 sites that we ultimately did put rain gardens in. Timing was an issue. We got the grants in the summertime. Some of the money had to be spent during midsummer, by midsummer. Okay, by June we had to have the money spent. I couldn't carry it over, so we had to make things happen. That's not the best time to be putting plants in, okay, the heat of the summer. So what we ended up doing was finding some nurseries that would allow us to prepay for the materials with the delivery later that fall when we were ready to put rain gardens in. So that allowed us to meet the contract requirements, but yet we didn't have to take these plants in June and try to keep them alive in little buckets and pails and containers until fall. So that worked out real well. So we bought the materials in early 2010, and the rain gardens were put in the fall for the most part. Contributions from the cities were crucial for the fall planting. We did rely a lot on volunteer help. Kevin organized and found a lot of volunteers to put these rain gardens in. So, and the cities did participate. All the cities or schools did help. We sent wish lists out, the plants we were looking for, what Kevin thought would fit best in different areas and locations, contacted different nurseries to see who was willing to provide the plants under those terms. We pay by early midsummer, excuse me, and then pick up later in the fall. And we had some losses, did have to fill in, purchase some plants and do some planting afterwards too, but that's expected. The end result, we did complete 4 large rain gardens. We had educational signage at each location. Signs turned out to be bigger than we thought. When we contracted that work out, we ended up with monster signs, heavy-duty poles. Project is putting the signs in, so, but they're still there. They're going to hold up. 5 groups of volunteers were involved for the 4 rain gardens that we put in. There were 4 cities and 1 school district that contributed labor, equipment, and materials to make it all happen. The educational outreach throughout and beyond Tulsa area added no cost through presentations, the media, and the internet and so on. We did all this for about $9,000 plus volunteer staff time. So we put in 4 rain gardens, bought all the materials for about $9,000, which is pretty reasonable when you stop and think about all the work that goes into something like that. We thought we came in at a pretty good point. Okay, at this point, Kevin's got slides concerning each one of these projects, and so he's going to go through a lot more detail on what exactly took place. He was there every step of the way on all these projects. Okay.
All right, thanks, Vernon. Excuse me. As we mentioned, we had 4 sites in the end. 1 site didn't work out just because one of my contacts had an arrangement with a certain school, and it just didn't end up coming through. We used those plants at another site. So if you were wondering why we have 4, but our top site was Ray Harral Nature Center in Broken Arrow, and you can see, for one, it's a beautiful setting. It's a place where people come, and they have probably some kind of environmental bent since they're visiting there. There's a fairly small parking lot, but all the runoff goes straight down to a storm drain in the corner and straight into the creek. So we thought, what can we do to handle this? There was this lawn area here with enough of a slope to take water off the parking lot and into a garden there. Notice those, there's some dogwood trees there, and they're alive at this point, and they'll be dead by the end of this presentation. Here's the general design. So water flowing in, water flowing out, and we can't go into a lot of detail of that, but this was construction, and this is one of those things where you get what you pay for, which was free labor. This was great to have heavy equipment, but this is not the kind of equipment that you want to build a rain garden because it compacted the soil. So, but it's still working okay, and the plants will help open it out over time. But we had that help with several city workers, plus Scott Grant from the from the Conservation District office helped out that day. A couple of days later, we came back with Blue Thumb volunteers and Broken Area Beautification Committee to help plant it. And by the way, if you're confused, I used to work for the Conservation Commission until January, and now I'm working with Howell and Vancuren, so just to clarify that. So Blue Thumb was a program I worked with at the time, and they came out and planted. We put in all Oklahoma native plants here, largely focused on perennials in this case, and these are all ones that I tried out at my home gardens and found out they tolerate drought pretty well. So here it is after we finished planting the garden. We thought we would delay the curb cut to let the vegetation get established, which ended up being a mistake because it didn't rain all year. So we planted these fall 2010, then 2011 was the first awful summer, right? So here it was, struggling through, limping along. It got through. This is the first significant rain after a really hot, dry summer. The plants are hanging in there. We planted them in the fall to give the roots a chance to establish and have them a better chance to overwinter. And the goal here was really just to kind of, not have any, just let the plants survive on their own. So we finally cut the curb in October. We put in signs, and we moved a few plants around. There were a couple places where, I transplanted a beautyberry from my house, and stuck it in there. Just a few little holes to fill in. Next spring, the plants are coming back pretty healthy, doing pretty well. We had the curb cut now, so by the end of the year, the garden's doing great in dead dogwoods. See that? So those didn't survive those 2 years, but the rain garden with fresh plants did. So another site that we did was Sapulpa Aquatic Center. Here we. One of the things I liked about this site was that it was a construction area, so there was no grass to deal with. But unfortunately, they put grass in, and then it was there all summer before, so we still had to deal with Bermuda grass and dig it up and all that. But we incorporated more native grasses into this design to match some of the landscaping around the building. So the city of Sapulpa helped us clear the grass, haul in rocks, soil and mulch. We brought in some soil from the soil we replaced to get rid of the grass. We thought we could just dig down and not worry about rhizomes. And we effectively got rid of the grass that way. Helped us with the construction of the berm and outlet and edging. And then a day or two later, we had the Creek County Master Gardeners help us put in the plants and add mulch. And so this is what it looked like after the completion. And so that last picture was fall. This is April. So one of the problems that we encountered was it was part of a construction site. And the next phase of the development was to put in a picnic area, so they destroyed the area, and a lot of sediment washed into our garden. Another thing is that you can see it there on this slide. There's a drain there. It was on the original plan before we decided to put a garden in. So, they went back and put a drain in, and it happened to be in the middle of the garden. So now we had a drain to drain out the water. We're trying to hold back. But anyway, the city sealed it. And so now you can see it holds the water just the same. But it caused kind of a mess, and there actually still aren't any plants in that area because they totally dug them all out. And we didn't have any budget to replace them. So here we are repairing the damage finally in June. But you can see the garden's looking all right. We just dug out some of that soil, put in some mulch. Here it is after the first rough summer. We did a little bit of maintenance in October. When we put in the signs. That was a busy day. We put the signs in and maintained all 3 gardens that day, and so we got a lot accomplished. And at that point, we'd had troubles with the maintenance crews not edging the garden and things like that. So the Bermuda grass was creeping in, and so we finally decided that the stormwater crew there that helped us put it in had to be the ones that maintained it and looked after it, because the regular maintenance guys could care less about the rain garden there and how it looked. So that was October. In May, it was still looking pretty good. City of Sapulpa's on their own at this point, and I haven't been able to make it back there in a while, so I don't know exactly what it's like. Here's Remington Elementary School, and this one was probably our least successful project. There's a new parking area there that was established, and we decided to build along the side of that. In retrospect, I would take this whole edge along the side of the rain garden and just put it in grass and have a swale through there or something, because that was the part of the project that was the most difficult. You'll see some slides soon. But we really wanted a project in the Tulsa area, and at the time, the city of Tulsa we got support from soil, mulch, and rocks, but some of the sites that we were looking at, it just didn't work out. And so the school district worked out pretty well. they actually supplied a backhoe and 3 workers to help us with this. They cleared the grass, hauled rocks, and we had, this was actually our first event, was getting the United Way Day of Caring. We had IBM volunteers that helped us work through the soil and get remaining grass out, and help us build the outlet structures and spread mulch. This was a hot day and a long day, and at 4 o'clock when they were leaving, and it was supposed to rain the night before, that night, and there were still a few outlet structures to protect, I was like, please don't leave me. And a couple people stayed, and I don't remember their names because I was kind of delirious at the time, but I really appreciate them, and I always thank them to people that I talk to. We waited a couple months, made sure that we didn't have Bermuda grass problems where it was coming up, and dealt with those before planting. We had 1 kid from plant 1 plant each, and most of these kids had never done that. And we put about half of them in the first day. The second day, we put the rest of them in half the time. And but one of these kids, that kid there in the red shirt, came back the next day. He's like, "There's my plant over there. Can I help you guys?" And we're like, "Well, we can't really, But he was at recess, and he was really proud of the plant he put in. And I hope it's one of the ones that survived. So here it is, completed. We were supposed to have bigger Virginia sweet spire, but that's another story to begin with. And this is it with no supplemental watering in July of the next year. Really struggling in August, but we have some rain, and the Virginia sweet spire, the tiny plants, hung on there. In October, we put the signs in. We did some maintenance. We had a blowout that we patched up with some soil. And in May of 2012, we still have, and this part of the rain garden is still doing okay. The part that's really struggling is that strip, which, and actually, it's kind of reached a happy medium that I'll show you pretty soon. One of the things that didn't work out, this was an elementary school, so they don't have maintenance potential, but they said they had high school students that would come in groups and would be able to help out, and there were a couple of them, and that never materialized. So there was no maintenance whatsoever except for whatever I could do, and this was not my job priority once this project was over. So, but I did manage to get a group of students from a grad student that I know, Zach, who worked at Tulsa Met School, and they came out. We actually had a concrete truck clean out their concrete in this ditch, and so fortunately those kids were able to bust it out. We cleaned it up, got some mulch in there, and it's looking okay. It was looking better than it was when we first got there. Most of the Virginia sweet spire died, and it's one of the plants that I think you could use in a rain garden if you're going to be supplementally watering it, but it's really outside of its native range here. It doesn't quite cut especially awful summers. So this is what it looked like a few weeks ago when I went back. They're edging the garden now, but they're edging it at the sidewalk, at the parking lot. Kids have come and thrown all the rocks that were our check dams into the soil, into the woods and onto the grass and things like that. But actually, this is fine. This is what I would do, if I did it over again, I would do it this way. So, and part of why we had more water than usual was because when we got up to the end, I saw, oh, there's a swale here bringing water down. Let's just bring it in. And so plenty of water comes in, and it can feed the rain garden at the end now. So, Bentley Park in Bixby, we did, let me just check the time. This one was a project that got delayed because it was part of a bigger funding project. It was part of a public works project. This is one where it was supposed to be ready the same time as the other gardens, but it was over a year later. The nursery that we used was kind to hold on to these plants for longer and longer time and water them through an awful summer, and ended up getting another bit of money from the city of Bixby just for the care, fortunately. So, but in the end, it finally went in at 2012. There were very small plants, so this was not the ideal time at all because we were hoping for a fall planting. Even the fall of 2011 would have been nice. But no, it's a year and a half later, and we're just coming into summer, and last summer was awful, and how's it going to do? Well, fortunately, with the maintenance that the city performed on it, well, I guess first thing to mention, this actually won Environmental Project of the Year for 2013 from the Oklahoma Chapter of Public Works. And this is what it looked like last summer. So it's doing pretty well. And this is what it looked like a couple weeks ago. So maybe the winter isn't as beautiful. But from a distance, because of the hardscape and everything, it doesn't look bad. You know, unless you're peering in there, there's a little bit of trash or whatever. But you can see the vegetation's coming up and ready to go. So the signage, we had one sign at each rain garden. You know, there's some. The reason why we delayed it a year was because we did the signs through OSU Sign Shop, and they had other projects that were their priority. So when they were finally ready, they came to us unpainted. So we had this whole day of painting. Thankfully Vernon and Richard came and helped, and Scott Grant as well. So we painted the signs, but at least they're a nice brown instead of black, as they would have been otherwise. And so we had a bunch of people helping us out. I kind of mentioned that before. So the idea of this sign was that we could print off and laminate paper and replace them when needed. But as you can see, you know, after a year and a half, the sign in Bixby is getting kind of waterlogged, and the one at Remington, which is a year and a half older, or about a year older, is looking kind of rough. So I think that we might be able to solve that next time by just caulking, because I think the water is coming on the top and going under, and that might, if we can keep the water out, maybe they would last longer. So, but we can still replace the signs. So I did a number of presentations to get the word out about rain gardens across the area, and we had the media. There was a really enthusiastic supporter in Sapulpa. He actually delayed the story a couple weeks because there was homecoming, that was going to be front page, and then something else was front page. He says, I want this to be a front page story. So there it came like a few weeks later. So it was great to have someone that's that into it. There were media attention at every one of these events. So we had news stories. I actually had, a year later, I had a contractor come to my house, and we were sitting in the back signing paperwork. He's like, nice yard. I said, oh, that's actually a rain garden, and you know, I can't help to educate as I can. And he said, oh, I thought you looked familiar. I saw you on TV. So it had to have been, well, one of these events. So it's amazing how well it works. And we also had a Facebook page that has photos from all of these events that you can go back and see, you know, construction, you know, to present, what's going on. And I still have access to the site, so I might update that. So back to Vernon to cover some more.
All right, just a couple of slides here to cover, go through this real quick, but rain gardens is part of larger projects, and we can combine rain garden projects for local public works projects in general. Just work them in. The Bixby Public Works project, it was part of a bigger project. They were doing a street widening, a street development project. We had some delays there. Funding and construction, our funding had to be spent by a certain time, but there was a delay in the street project. Well, you don't want to put the rain garden in until the street project's finished, or they're going to be running over everything you did with heavy equipment and it won't look like much by the time the street's finished. So we had to delay the rain garden until the street was finished. So one of the issues, we just had to communicate back and forth with the funding agency to tell them we're still on track, we're going to finish it. But we just had to have a little extra time, wait for the street to finish before we could finish the rain garden. They were really good. They worked with us over that. We didn't really have any problems at all. When you're working with the cities, there are different city types, and it pays to get to know what type of city management you have when you start working with them. Some cities have just a strong elected mayor management program. Others have a city council you have to work through. Others have local regional planning commissions you need to work through. So it kind of makes a difference in how the city is set up, who you need to contact, and what avenues you approach these in. Local codes and ordinances sometimes can be a hindrance to LIDs and rain gardens. If you want to go through the codes and ordinances and make sure they are LID friendly, make sure they're not going to want to come in and mow your rain garden because it's violating some mowing code that they have on the books. Okay, and then some of the other flood ordinances and fire codes and things like that. Just want to be familiar with those. Go through them if you haven't already. Try to remove as many of the barriers as possible. Make it as easy as possible. Contractors, if you're going to make them jump through hoops to complete a project, they're not going to do it. So try to make your codes as user-friendly as possible. Encourage them to implement some of these LID practices. And then coordinate, and then just stay on top of the projects. Sometimes you just have to kind of keep pushing and keep pushing. INCOG's role in this whole process was to secure the funding, and then we dealt with the agencies that we got the funding from. We did the reporting and everything else. Like I said, Kevin did the hard part. He organized the people and actually made the rain gardens happen. So we were real happy to team up with him on that. And that's pretty much it. So are there any questions about these rain garden projects or LID in general? Yes?
How did you make the initial contact knowing that somebody was interested in some of these solutions? Was it through INCOG? How did you become aware that people would be willing?
You mean the locations for the rain gardens?
We started off with our Green Country Stormwater Alliance group and the committee, and then we just put the word out. We're going to build some rain gardens. We're going to build some rain gardens. We want to do it in your communities. We're going to put in, we'd like to put in 5, so they're not going to be great big projects, relatively small. We wanted areas, locations that were visible. So we're going to get a lot of traffic past them because, again, it's an educational thing. We're trying to make people aware that rain gardens can work. If they're done right, they can be, they can look nice and they serve a function, a purpose. So we just put the word out, and different people started calling and said, I got a spot. I know somebody that might be interested, and contacts just started coming in.
And so some people were very disappointed they weren't picked.
We had 15 different sites proposed that, and we're only going to do 5, so we knew we couldn't make everybody happy, so then we had to go down the list and see which ones were going to be the most appropriate. Okay?
Kevin, can you talk a little bit about not doing a lot of soil amending or excavation and bringing in outside soils and how that played into your decision making or
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, I was looking for places that had sandy soil that could perk well, that's. I have sandy soil at home, and that's how I built my rain gardens. But you can work even with even in Sapulpa where the soil wasn't as good. We had a shallower depth, and so you can do a test. Plot in the area, dig a hole a foot deep and saturate the soil and see how fast it drains. And if it drains a foot within a day after you saturated the soil, then you can go up to what would be the maximum depth we would want to have in a rain garden. I think especially it's a good way to keep the cost down a lot if you can work with the soil that you have. Are there any other? Okay. Yes.
If you had a well-functioning rain garden that was attractive and great appearance, would it be your view that there would be less maintenance expense associated with it than traditional landscaping, or would it be more?
Well, I guess one of the questions would be, would it be less maintenance than perhaps traditional stormwater maintenance as well? But this should be less maintenance, yes, because, for one, these have rarely been maintained, and they're still, looking pretty good. As opposed to the mowing and edging and all that stuff that's weekly and at great expense. If you design it, well, the system should start to take care of itself. And one of the things that I didn't realize as I was, getting to this earlier, that the ones that integrated the grasses and the forbs together were more successful at, filling in and being a better maintained system. So the flowers may look nice, but they don't look great in the winter. So the grasses have winter interest, some of them. So it's just a matter of learning how the system functions together, and you can get a lower maintenance system out of it.